This is the Next Bite of Life podcast, the place to be to hear personal stories from expats, digital nomads, and everybody else taking their next bite of life. Welcome to the latest episode of the Next Bite of Life podcast. My name is Kem. On this episode, I'm going to talk all about Bilbao, Spain. Now, for those who don't know, because it's not one of the top three, as in Barcelona, Madrid, and Sevilla, Bilbao is in the Basque Country up north, and it is definitely one of the most beautiful places I have been to in all of Spain. Now, I wasn't too eager to visit because I hadn't heard a lot about it because it's not one of the things that people talk about. And it turns out, in fact, it is a very popular place for other Spanish people to go on vacation, but it's not really a tourist destination per se. This is really a shame because it's a fabulous city and I was really, really impressed. It's an absolutely charming city and it's located a small distance from the bay of the Biscay coast. And I have to say that the popularity is skyrocketing as a must visit destination in the country because of the Guggenheim Museum, which you may or may not have heard of. There are other things to do in the city, of course, but I'll tell you all about it in this guide of the best things to do in Bilbao. You will not be disappointed. The very first thing, I mean, like everybody knows this, it's worldwide. It's just stunning. The Guggenheim Museum is it's futuristic. It's hard to describe unless you're looking. And if you go to the YouTube version of this podcast, you'll be able to see pictures of the museum, the way it looks on the outside, all shiny metal and something that looks like an arachnid in the front of it, and it's absolutely gigantic. This museum is made from titanium, and it was actually designed by the famous architect Frank Gehry. It opened in 1997, and it was built at a cost of like almost 90 million. Now, it came about because the city of Bilbao approached the Guggenheim Museum and told them that they wanted something spectacular in their old port, which, had gone into like disarray and was no longer the popular place in the city. In the old days, of course, the port was very popular with all the ships coming in and products that were being moved in between Spain and other countries. So they wanted to revive the area. And so they approached them to have something that was going to be mind blowing and have it become a source of income for the city once again. The Basque government said they would cover $100 million in construction cost and create an acquisition fund and pay all the fees that would be associated with running the place. And it actually came in at a cost of 89 million, and there was a huge grand opening when that happened in 1997. So it actually came in on budget, on time. It started in 1991 and it was open in 1997. So you can see they were really determined to make this work and they wanted something fabulous and they certainly got it. This museum, like I said, made of titanium, has been a draw for the city of Bilbao. And I can see the attraction after seeing the thing on the inside and on the outside. Now, I would recommend definitely booking an appointment to get in to see the artwork inside. It's worth it, and it cost about 13 euros. When we went to see it, it is I just it's hard for me to describe because it's just like it's insanely beautiful on the outside and on the inside. When you go in, there's so many gigantic displays of art. that just blows your mind. It's a combination of modern and contemporary. And when you go, you're just stunned because you don't know where to start. And I was, there were some pieces in there that was a little bit hesitant and I didn't really like. Um, so the first floor, which was where the permanent display was, I was a little disappointed and I was hoping that it wasn't going to be like that throughout the whole thing. But luckily it was not. Once we cleared that floor and the gigantic, I forget what the name of the art was, but it was just basically was a corridor. It just kept going, and I think it was called Life or something like that. So you were just going, and I didn't see anything exciting about it, but I guess it means something to the artist. And I guess I don't have the artistic insight to see what it was all about. But once we got past that floor, I just loved everything else. They have a very impressive collection of Impressionist artists such as Monet and Van Gogh, which to me was the epitome of art. Like my favorite kind of art is Impressionist. And so I was really amazed at the collection that they have there because it's quite impressive, and I could have spent hours looking at it. And it was great because we went in January, so it wasn't very crowded, and we were able to linger over the artwork. It's hailed as one of the most spectacular buildings in the style of the deconstructivism. That's what they call it. I'm sorry, it's a hard word for me to say, but a lot of architects have declared it the greatest building of our time. And if you've ever seen, you can Google like an aerial view of the museum and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's actually brilliant. The panels of the titanium on the outside, they sort of look like fishy scales. And it's just fantastic. And it's hard to see like how somebody can come up with such a thing. It's like 24,000 square meters. So it's really gigantic. And there's nothing else to say except for if you visit Bilbao, you definitely want to make a stop there because it's worth it. And I was complaining at first because I thought 13 euros was a little too much for it because I didn't know what to expect. But it was actually worth it. There's on the outside there's a Jeff Koons humongous dog. uh just people just call it Pero, and it's made entirely of live flowers, and it dominates the outside of the museum. And so on one side you have the arachnid spider, and then on the other side you have the dog. And it's just beautiful. They keep the flowers green and everything matches. It's a beautiful sight. So that's definitely one of the first things that you should see when you go to Bilbao. It runs right across the Nevian River. And so I would say that's probably the top draw of the Basque country, the Basque city of Bilbao. The second thing you have to see in Bilbao is the Casco Viejo, which is the old town. It's sometimes called the Seven Calles, which means seven streets, because it's made up, in the beginning, the old town was made up of seven narrow little streets, which is some of the oldest in the town of Bilbao. And some believe that it is the resting place of the Santiago de Compostela trail. Those are the people that go on the journey and they walk the Camino on the Compostela trail, like looking for inspiration or looking to get reality. And it's a very long journey if you're willing to do it. But they said it's definitely on the stop of Santiago. I don't know if it's the final resting place or anything like that, but the old town is just beautiful, and it's full of shops, restaurants, plenty of cafes, and it's a great place to hang out during your visit there. You can check out some of the touristy stuff. You can eat at the serve. If you're not familiar with the pinchos, you can get pinchos in any of the cafes and hang out and people watch. There's something called Santiaguitos. These are little marshmallow sweets that are blessed on the day of the Saint Blas, and they're supposed to heal what ails you. So you can also see why the people who stop there to rest when they go on the trail will stop there and get this Santiaguitos for their journey and to heal their bones and their hurt feet and their bleeding feet, because this is really a journey of willpower, I guess. Because I don't know, I would never want to do something like that, walk, you know uh for days. Yeah, just to say I've done it. It's not really something. I'd rather be one of the ones that are sitting there having coffee and welcoming the travelers. And the square at the Plaza Nueva, which is the main square, sort of like Madrid's square. Every single city, every single major city in Spain has a square, and their Plaza Nueva is one of the most beautiful things. They have this Balboa tiles on the floor, and it's very unique. It sort of reminds you of like the city of Porto in Portugal, where the tiles are on the street, like embedded on the floor. And it's a beautiful place to sit out and just people watch. It's the color of the buildings, the limestone construction, and it's very fitting for a beautiful place like that to have a beautiful plaza to match. Now, one of the things also, like I said, the pincho is an extremely popular thing, and it's what they're famous for in Bilbao and the whole of the Basque Country. And you're probably asking yourself, what is a pincho? A pincho is a small snack that I found in the bars, mostly in the north of Spain. And it's a slice of hard bread that is topped with different things. I mean, the imagination is the only thing that can stop you as far as like the toppings on these things. They have anything from salmon to eggs to potatoes, you know, anchovies, fish, whatever it is. You can have anything, and it's held together by a toothpick or something like that. A pincho is a spike, so it could be like a metal toothpick or something to hold it together. Now the bread is hard because a lot of the toppings are soft, so it's hard so that it stays solid and you're not stuck with this soggy thing. The only thing I didn't like about it is like after a while, all that hard bread just kind of makes my teeth hurt, but my husband was loving it. So if you're into that, you will just love it. After a while, I started taking up the toppings and just having the toppings, but not the bread underneath because I found them too hard. So you can find pinchos all along the Plaza Nueva. And the plaza itself took like 65 years to build. And it's been standing there since 1851. On the Sundays, the plaza is turned into a flea market where you can shop for everything: clothes, records, whatever your heart desires, old doorknobs. And we got so many things that kitschy things that you just use around the house and you buy them and you eventually don't do anything with them anyway. But it's a nice place to go around and see. Something else you want to see in Bilbao is the archaeological museum, Arqueología Musea in Basque. Now, Basque sounds very different from Castellano Spanish, and it was very hard for us to understand when they speak Basque, when they speak in their language. Easier for us was the Spanish. So we were very happy that a lot of people spoke Spanish because we could understand them. But once they go on in the Basque language, it's very hard to understand. Now, the archaeological museum, which is also in the old town, the Casco Viejo, has fossils that are about 400, that are no, that are over 400,000 years old. So just imagine that. They trace back to the past history of the Basque region, and they've got statues, fortified villages, the models, and how the Romans ruled, and a lot of other artifacts in there. So if you get a chance to visit the museum, you should definitely do that. Unfortunately, a trip wasn't that long, so it was something that we didn't get to see. But we love the city so much, we're planning on going back there. And when we left, actually, we didn't plan on stopping in We landed in Bilbao. We took a flight from Valencia to Bilbao, and we were only supposed to stay there for a night and keep going and just take the bus anywhere. But we ended up staying like 2 nights or three nights because we were so in love with the city, but we still didn't get to see a lot of the things that we wanted to, because a full day almost was spent at the Guggenheim Museum. So we had to like shove a whole bunch of things in, and we didn't want to like just go on a small trip there. So we figured it's better to come back and see that. Like the Mercat Central in Valencia or the Mercado in Barcelona or the big market in Madrid, Bilbao also has the La Ribera market, and it's a gorgeous building on the waterfront. The La Ribera market is the largest fresh fruit market in Europe, and it has a Guinness Book of World Records recognition in 1990 to prove it too. I was really surprised because I had assumed like the Central Market in Valencia was the biggest one. So I was humbled to find out that this one was the record holder. And you can get all sorts of pinchos and sangria, and they're just beautiful just to see, and the pictures and the food selection. And we had, potatoes with pepper on top of like bread. We had like tuna with like mixed seafood on top of the bread. We have, um, tongue and tripe, and wonderful soups, and it was absolutely fantastic. We ate there at least 2 or 3 times. There are 3 floors to it, and there's over 10,000 square meters. You can find fresh fruit, cheese, every other delicacy. And the bottom floor is completely dedicated to pinches. Plenty of sitting and cocktails, and it's just, you can tell like a lot of locals and tourists are like to sit there and hang around and just eat to their heart's content and people watch. We also found that the prices there were actually slightly cheaper than if you were to go to the Plaza Nueva. So I would eat here as much as possible and maybe go to the plaza to people watch. I think that would probably be the better way to do it and save yourself money. It was at least maybe a euro or less for each pincho. And when you think that, for your meal, you're probably going to have like 5 or 6 pinchos. So, it saves you a lot of money to go to the market as opposed to going to the plaza or anywhere in the old city, which I thought was a little pricey. One of the other places we went to was the Gran Via, which, like the Gran Via in Madrid, it's huge and it's long. The beginning of the Gran Via has a statue of Diego, who was a nobleman and the Lord of Biscay. And the other end is like a circular square, and it's worth taking the walk all the way down. The beginning of the Gran Via, next to the statue, there's the tourismo office, so you can stop in there, grab your pamphlets to show you around so you know where you're going. But it is absolutely fantastic. It's the center of the financial district of Bilbao, and there's also the center of commerce there, and it's the main avenue of the city. The area is called the El Ensanche district, and it was actually annexed to Bilbao in 1870. There are a lot of high end shops there, and it's a really wide boulevard. It's one of the most stupendously, it looks rich just looking at it. And if you're familiar with some place like Oxford Circus in London, think of like where Selfridges is. It's sort of like that, but it just looks majestic because all the buildings are very uniform and they just look great. You know, they're the head offices of like banks like the BBVA, which is one of the bigger banks in Spain, is there. And I think that Gran Via rivals even the one in Madrid. You can go off the main streets and you'll find plenty of places to eat and shop with the elite of the city. Now, I mentioned the Guggenheim Museum close to the Nebion River. Now there's the bridge, one of the famous sites in Bilbao. It's called the Zubizuri Bridge. And I may be saying that wrong. It may be Subisuri Bridge if you're in Valencia because the Z is pronounced as an S, but I don't know how the Basque people say it. But this bridge, immediately when I saw it, I thought, oh, wow, that looks familiar to me. And because we have the City of Arts and Sciences in Valencia, which has a bridge, and the whole complex was designed by the Spanish architect by the name of Santiago Calatrava. And I immediately recognized the bridge because it looks similar to the one in the City of Arts and Sciences. So I was actually delighted to see and find out that it was built by the same person. This Zubizuri Bridge, it connects the left and the right sides of the Nervian River, and it was opened in 1997. It was great to see it, the view from our hotel, because we were right by the water. And so we had to cross the bridge to go to the Guggenheim, which is on the other side. Now, Zubizuri means white bridge in the Euskera Basque language. And when the bridge was built, it was built with clear glass. So basically, when you were standing on it, you could see the water under you and you could see the river as it flowed. And I think it caused a lot of like anxiety. I know for sure I would have had anxiety trying to cross a clear bridge and seeing, knowing that the water, because I can't swim, knowing that the water is below me, I would have just had palpitations. There were a lot of accidents and people slipping in wet, um, in the rain. So eventually, the city put on a sturdy, the non-slip carpet, which covers most of the surface now, which is a good thing in my opinion because I was able to walk it without fear. I don't think I could do that without having that there. The edges are still clear, so if you're brave, you can move to the edges. But I wasn't brave enough to move over there. There is also a funicular in Bilbao that people like to go and see. It's called the Funicular de Axtanda, and you can get amazing views of the city. It runs every 15 minutes, and the plaza, it's called the Plaza del Funicular, and it climbs up to the mountain at Sanda. It costs 350 for the round trip, and it's a fun way to see what the city looks like from the top. One of the famous sites also in Bilbao is the Iglesia San Nicolas. Now, this is a Catholic church that was built in 1756 and is dedicated, of course, to St. Nicholas, who was the patron saint of sailors. And it's located close to the river and by the old town. It's a Baroque design architectural building, and it has two bell towers, which I thought was actually, insanely no, which is normal. But if you're familiar with Spain, you'll know that there are quite a few towers in the churches that only have one. So that's when we were in Malaga, they have one. A lot of churches build one and they run out of money and they never complete the second. So it's not unusual to see, churches with just one tower, but this one actually has two. and it's a nice building. You can go in, and if you're into churches, which I tend to be in, but after a while I get tired of seeing them. So we didn't go into this one. We passed by and just picked in, but we didn't actually walk in. But it's in a beautiful spot. There is an open plaza across from you, and I can understand why it's there, because the sailors used to pass there on their way to the port. So when it was a huge thing for Bilbao, you wanted to make sure that you thank your God for your trip, and hopefully and pray that you come back in one piece. So that's why that's there. And it's been there for a long time, and it will be there for a lot longer. The last thing we saw, which is one of the other things, that my husband especially was very thrilled about because we're big football fans, is the San Mames Stadium. And this is their football, the soccer field. And for any soccer lover, it's something that you've got to see. It looks very nice from the outside. It's very impressive. It sits about 53,000 people, and it's actually a newer stadium that replaced the older one in the same place in 2013. And it's great because even if you don't have tickets to get inside, around the stadium they have like TV, huge screens that you could watch the game from. So I would assume on game days they also have that on so that people can see, and it's close to the bus station. So, if you come in on the bus, for instance, you could stop there before you get into the city, so you don't have to take the tram back if you want. But it's definitely a delightful thing to see. Now, during that trip, we stayed at a hotel called the Bilbao Plaza, which is right along the Nebion River. And I like the fact that it was so close to the Guggenheim Museum, for instance, just a few minutes. We could get to the Gran Via within like 10 minutes. The City Hall, which is one of the most stunning buildings. I love our City Hall in Valencia, but this was absolutely magnificent, was right next to the hotel. And we actually saw some of the people that were protesting one day, and it was great to see them come together. I mean, it was not a violent protest at all. We couldn't read the sign, but it was awesome. And it's a beautiful sight because you've got the water on the other side in front of you. So I would definitely recommend staying at the Bilbao Plaza. We actually enjoyed it, and it was not even 10 minutes walk to the old center either. There are lots of shops and cafes to eat at, and the price was very reasonable too. So get to the Bilbao Plaza if you stay in Bilbao. It was a great way to stay. But I've already mentioned the pinchos as something that you should try when you're in Bilbao. You will not be disappointed. They're just, tripe, bacalao, suckling pig, I mean, steak. We had so many different foods that are local to the area, and they were just delicious. I just loved it because I love like hearty foods. If you're a vegetarian, you may not like that kind of food, but I do. Now, would I recommend you visit in Bilbao? Oh, yes, indeed I would. It is to be part of any Spain itinerary. And the fact that it's not really visited by a lot of tourists makes it even more exciting. And you're finding something newer. I think of Bilbao like, for instance, in Italy, there's Bologna. Bologna is a city that's just gorgeous, and a lot of people don't really visit there except as an afterthought. They go to Rome and da da da. And Bilbao is sort of like that for Spain, in my opinion. It's not an often visited place by tourists, but it should be. But I think, with the with the museum, the Guggenheim being there, I think a lot of people will definitely visit it more. So if you want to be one of the in people, you get there before it becomes like overrun by tourists. It is cold in the wintertime. And that may be one of the reasons why a lot of expats are not there. It's just mostly local people. And it's funny because one of the trivia things that my husband was telling me was that their their football team was made up of only people from the area for the longest time, which is hard because you look at football teams now and everybody's from all over the world. It's very rare to find, a team that's made up of only locals. So for Bilbao to have held that honor for so long is just absolutely amazing. But if you get a chance to visit it, go visit, but maybe not in the winter when it's really cold. But the city also reminds me of Valencia in its looks and the feel of it and the size. And I think I could easily live there. The only reason why I wouldn't will be because of the cold. It gets extremely cold. Like, people are wearing fur coats in the winter, and I'm sort of over that. It would also be hard to, of course, to get used to the language when they speak in Euskera, which is all the street signs are in Euskera and Castilian. So you can understand things, but I would think like to really enjoy things more, you would have to learn the language, which I have a hard time enough learning Spanish. I don't know how I could learn Euskera, which actually reminds me of Maltese when I think about it. It seems like a lot of the words have so many X's and Q's, but it was just rapid fire. And I don't think my brain could stand learning another language right now. These are just a few things to do and see in Bilbao, but there are many more things, and I would love to go back to visit the city. I think when the weather gets a little bit better, I will definitely head over there. Hopefully, this whole thing of not being able to travel far will subside, or the vaccine will be here, or we'll be able to travel again, and I'll be able to visit this beautiful city. We have unfinished business. I think there's still a lot of things that I need to see that I haven't seen yet. So that's it for this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And don't forget to check the YouTube video on this, which will have some of the pictures from the city and the beautiful Pinxtos that I told you about, as well as the beautiful pictures of the Guggenheim. And I hope you've enjoyed this. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you enjoy listening to the show, please don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you listen on, whether Spotify or iTunes. If you're interested in moving to Spain, I have a course on moving to Spain called Expat in Spain, and it is available now on Thinkific. It's called Expat in Spain course on Thinkific.com. Thinkific.com, Expat in Spain. I will have the links on the video to this, and that's it. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.